Super Bowl Sunday, February the 7th, 2016, started off like any other Sunday. I went to my Zen meditation group, worked out, and then I sat down at my desk to catch up on email. Suddenly, I hear the sound of glass breaking coming from the other side of the house. What did that cat break this time? I get up to go and investigate, and out of the shadows steps a tall, dark man. Next thing I know, I'm face to face with a drug-crazed intruder. His fist smashes my face, and the blows keep coming until I fall backward and hit the floor hard. As I'm drifting into unconsciousness, he is kicking me in the ribs, and the voice in my head is saying, "Get up, you've got to get out, or you're going to die here today." Somehow, I'm able to pull myself off the floor and escape through the front door right into the arms of the police. I'm rushed to hospital, treated for a broken arm, cracked skull, bruises and contusions all over my body, and they arrest the guy on the scene. The policeman at the hospital tells me that he'll probably be behind bars for the rest of his life. But to my horror, because it was his first offense, he was released on bail 2 days later. I was terrified. Will he come back to finish the job? I live alone, I'm self-employed, and I support my 80-year-old mother. How would I manage? As the weeks passed and we waited for trial, it seemed as if my attacker's life as a senior in college was moving forward. I learned on Facebook that he graduated and then he got a job. All the while, I was stuck on my sofa, suffering from symptoms of concussion and PTSD. Obviously, it's taken a lot to rebuild my business and my life. But if I had to sum it up in one word, that word would be courage. So I want to share with you what I've learned about building what I call your courage muscle, so that you can have the strength and resilience you need to get through tough times, enjoy more success, or perhaps help others who may be struggling. For many years, I've had a practice of taking a time out for about 20 minutes every day where I sit in quiet and solitude. And I went right back to that habit after the attack, even though my mind was in chaos and nothing valuable went on for a long time. I still sat without busyness or distraction. And it was that habit, that small step, that I believed saved me from drowning in a downward spiral of defeat, because it carved out a time and space for healing and for me to connect with my inner wisdom. Eventually, I realized that as horrible as my circumstances were, my attitude was making things worse. If I wanted my life to get better, I was going to need to stop being a victim and start taking responsibility for my happiness going forward. But how? My courage muscle was weak and atrophied, and I had no motivation. Fortunately, I have great friends who knew how to stretch my thinking beyond the prison of fear and inertia that I was in. So when my friend Elizabeth asked whether my recent trauma might be an opportunity for deep emotional healing, it ticked me off, but it got me thinking. When my client Angela asked whether my horrible experience might one day lead to some more important and meaningful work, it ticked me off, but say it with me, it got me thinking. There we go. This is the audience participation part. When my friend Lourdes asked how I would go about reinventing myself now that I had an opportunity to let go of everything that no longer served me, it ticked me off, but it got me thinking. When my attacker's attorney asked whether I'd be willing to agree to a downgrading of charges in exchange for a guilty plea, it really ticked me off. And I said, hell no. Their story was that this young man had been a model student, an Eagle Scout, who had never done drugs. Apparently, his college mates had convinced him to try LSD laced with who knows what. Next thing you know, he's having a psychotic break, he commits a violent crime, and now he could be facing a life sentence. They said he remembered nothing about the attack. That made me crazy. I wanted to show him a picture of every bruise and take responsibility for my suffering. So, I insisted on a face-to-face meeting. And until that was going to happen, I was going to focus on healing myself. If you've ever gone back to exercise after a long while, then you probably know that the best way to build your strength is to use lightweight, do a lot of repetition, and work out often. So I decided to commit to one small but courageous act every day. Ask for help when I needed it. Feel and process an emotion that I might otherwise resist. Or perhaps call a business prospect I'd been avoiding. One small, conscious, courageous act a day. Just like going to the gym. Wow. What a difference. Within a few weeks, I had dozens of accomplishments. My confidence blossomed, and I started to have a different view of myself and the world. As my courage muscle grew stronger, I became more willing to dive deeper into emotional and spiritual healing. And as I did that, I became more compassionate with myself and with others. As the showdown day with my attacker approached, I wondered what would happen to him in prison. Was he a villain or a good kid who'd made a bad decision? I know I made lots of bad mistakes when I was his age. In my mind, though, he was still a 10-foot-tall monster. But when I saw him again, sane, sober, and dressed in a suit and tie, I realized that he was desperate to be forgiven. As he handed me a vase of red roses and a box of chocolate truffles, I just blurted out, "Gee, you don't look nearly as scary as you did the last time I saw you." He was shaking. "I'm sorry, so sorry," he said. Without thinking about what I was doing, I just stepped forward to give him a hug. Next thing I know, he is sobbing in my arms, and I'm comforting him, saying, "I forgive you. God forgives you." It was as if all the anger and weight I'd been storing up for the past year just disappeared. And all I could feel was love. After that, I helped him get his charges drastically reduced. He got probation, no prison time. And when I was invited to appear on NBC's Today Show with Megyn Kelly to be interviewed on my book about forgiveness and how it healed me, the young man willingly stepped forward to appear with me and take responsibility for his actions. Can you imagine how much courage that took to appear on national television for him, for me, for both of us? Courage is like a muscle that most people take for granted. But the more we consciously exercise it, the stronger and more flexible we get. So I invite you to stretch a little outside your comfort zone every day and commit a small conscious act of courage. I think you'll be amazed at how quickly your world expands, how strong and resilient you become, and how much you get done. And when an opportunity presents itself, you'll have developed the inner power to show up in a big way, ready for anything. Thank you.